Hello, Rajiv. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi there. Very happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
And congratulations on the silver medal. How do you feel? How does it feel? I mean, this is not new to you, by the way. You already have a medal from the 2016 Rio Olympics, but tell me about how you're feeling right now.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's bittersweet in a way. I mean, obviously, having been close in Rio to having a gold and then being close here, it's tough sometimes to take because it was one of those where, I really felt like I had a good opportunity to win the gold. But as it kind of gets further away from the competition, I realized that, it was a great achievement and it was a really, I'm very proud of the fact that I was able to win another silver medal.
Yeah, I was listening to one of your interviews right after the silver medal, and you were like, "We're gonna hop on a car and go to Montreal and then go to
Yeah.
Cincinnati." So you barely got any time to sort of savor the moment, I guess.
Literally none. I mean, we played on Saturday in Paris. We did media stuff basically until midnight on Saturday night. Got up super early, took a flight. I flew home for an evening to Indianapolis, literally changed out my stuff, put my hard court shoes in the suitcase. The next day I flew to Montreal and we started up on the Wednesday, I think it was. So it was yeah, very, very quick turnaround. Unfortunately, not much time, and that's how it is in tennis. It's one of the toughest things actually I find in tennis is even after good results, you don't have time to sort of enjoy it and celebrate it because it's like you got to be on to the next thing already.
There is barely an off season, right? I mean, like, which months are the lightest months for a tennis player?
Yeah, I mean the only off season we have is basically the end of November, and then really the month that is not having any tennis is December. So if you can really call it an off season, it's only 4 weeks. It's an off month really, but yeah, it's a tough one, and especially the Olympic years become very tough because they you add in another obviously huge event that you want to play really well at, an already packed summer schedule. So it's this year in particular has been pretty grueling, I must say.
Yeah, and Summer Olympics, right? I mean, you have French Open, you have Wimbledon, and Olympics coming all
Yeah,
together.
and then you have the U.S. Open literally around the corner. So you have three majors plus the Olympics in a span of I think it's 2.5 months basically. So
Yeah, wow. I mean, yeah, I'm glad I caught you right in the middle.
yeah, this has been the first week I've had, excuse me, the first week off I've had properly at home since just after the French Open. So yeah, it's been long for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you're based out of Carmel, Indiana, and I had the great opportunity to talk to the ex-mayor of Carmel, Indiana. I mean,
Yeah.
what a great city. I mean, some of the things that he said about Carmel makes me want to visit. And so, how was it growing up I mean, I can't call it the middle of nowhere. It's kind of a suburb of Indianapolis. But for someone from like the immigrant community, how was it
Yeah.
like for your father to settle down in a place like Indianapolis? Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, we moved around a little bit when I was a kid. I was born in Denver, lived in Northern California for 5 years, and then Wisconsin, which was similar to this, and then moved here when I was about 11 years old to Indianapolis. And I mean, look, I loved it. I thought that growing up in the Midwest was amazing. I mean, the people are, in my opinion, the warmest, most friendly in terms of in the U.S. You just have that sense of community, the sense of people helping each other and I was super comfortable in that way to the point where I really didn't ever think or want to live anywhere else. So what was it like? Yeah, it wasn't a big city, it wasn't New York City, it wasn't LA or anything like that, but I mean I think we I was able to foster some really great relationships by being here, and I'm super grateful for that.
Hmm. And what made you start with tennis? I mean, you mentioned somewhere that you started to play with your father, and that's how you got into tennis, and that you were not coached for a good part of your early career. So how was that like?
Yeah, I mean, my dad and I played tennis almost every day that I can remember from the time I was, yeah, let's see, well, I don't really remember my first day, put it that way. So until I was about 12 years old, it was just our activity that we would do. He'd come home from work and, we would go to either the local club in the winter or the local park in the summer or whatever, the local high school, and we would play. And it was just something that I took a liking to. I was obviously had some natural ability, but I enjoyed playing a lot of sports when I was a kid. It wasn't something I was never one to sort of sit in front of the TV and just be indoors. I love being outside, and but yeah, it was never supposed to be my job. It was never supposed to be something where I was groomed to be a professional or anything like that. It was a source of fun. And yeah, I didn't have a real coach until I was about 12, 13 years old. So yeah, I didn't have that growing up. Not, and it wasn't like I regret that. It was just how it was. It was our fun time together, my dad and I.
How was that, getting coached? Did you have to unlearn some of the things because, the bat swing or
Hmm.
the way you do a backhand? I've heard that you have to unlearn to be technically correct. Or some of the coaches are like, hey, this is his natural talent. This is how he does it. Let me improve on what he does naturally.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely some things that you have to sort of maybe rework a little bit. I wouldn't have to say I had to unlearn anything. At least I don't remember that feeling, but maybe slightly, yeah, rework. I think I was always surrounded by really good people that didn't sort of try and make me into somebody or, in terms of a person or a player that I'm not, So it was more about taking what I had and trying to make it the best possible way, which I think was a really it was conducive to enjoying the game and really improving it at the best I could, as opposed to sort of trying to turn it upside down because I didn't have a coach or I didn't have any real instruction when I was a kid. So I think that was a really good thing for me.
Yeah, and you looked up to Pete Sampras while growing up. I guess, he was in the peak of his career. Modeled your game based on Pete Sampras at any point?
Yeah, I mean, my dad wasn't a tennis player. He didn't know the game until we started playing it. And I was fortunate growing up in the US. We had a group of American players at the time that were incredible. They were really dominating tennis. And you know, there was a couple of them that I really enjoyed watching. But the thing about Pete was not only was his tennis amazing, I really liked his demeanor and sort of the way that he, went about his business. And I related to that, I guess. I was, a pretty quiet player. I liked the fact that, he kind of didn't, say much and didn't really, yeah, never threw his racket, never sort of, showed that much emotion. I could really relate to that. So I think it was more than just his tennis, but his sort of whole demeanor on court. Another one was Todd Martin. He wasn't quite as as successful as Pete was, but he kind of had a lot of the same qualities in terms of his demeanor and his style, and so I really took to that. And that's sort of how I learned the game is watching these players not only play but act and just how they carried themselves on the court, and they had a huge influence on me because my dad wasn't a coach. He didn't have any, basis of instruction. So, his instruction was to watch these great players and try to be like them as much as possible.
Yeah, and growing up in like a South Asian family or like an Asian family in general, I think it's I've heard this with Asian families. There's a huge emphasis on education, right? How was that like with your parents? Did they, want you to be like an academically uh, oriented kid, or were they completely okay with you choosing tennis as a full-time profession?
I think yes, we had that struggle in a way, but I think I was really fortunate that my father especially had a lot of foresight as to what um, living in the U.S. really could mean for education. Also, his thought was always like, well, if you improve your tennis and continue it and all that, it's actually going to open doors to education, not close them. Which he's absolutely right. I had the opportunity to go to a lot of universities that I wouldn't have gotten a chance to had I not been a tennis player. But then the other thing about my parents, which I thought I really appreciate, is they were looking to just make sure that whatever I did it with passion. I did it with 100%. And they saw that. They saw that that was tennis for me. So it didn't mean that education was going to be secondary or take a back seat, but it also didn't mean that they were going to not let me follow that. It was always my choice. I always chose it, and they genuinely saw that it made me happy to play, and they were very happy to go along with that.
Yeah, you come across as a person who absolutely love the sport. People ask you, "Hey, what keeps you going?" And you're like, "Hey, I started playing tennis because I love the sport, and that still continues." Was there an inflection point where you thought that, hey, this is what I really, really want to do? Because, sometimes you play the sport at some level, you get beaten by someone far, far better than you. And then
Mm-hmm.
you are like, gee, I'm not at this level. So
Mm-hmm.
I probably should not put in my eggs in this basket and continue. Uh, but did you win something significant that completely changed your life? Like, hey, this is what I really want to do, and I can compete at this level.
I never really looked at it as in terms of wins or losses, because I feel like that's so fleeting. Like one day I can beat somebody and the next day I can lose to them. But I just sort of looked at it as, well, am I continuing to improve? Am I feeling like, things that, in my game are getting better? And I remember those kinds of situations more so than any specific wins or losses where it's like, okay, you play someone and, you win or lose, whatever, but then you play them again 6 months or a year later, and it's significantly different because you've gotten, or in this case, I've gotten significantly better. And it's like, wow, that it wasn't that I beat this person or didn't beat this person. It's like I could actually play at this level now, and like that I remember happening a few times, specifically throughout my kind of younger days where it was like, yeah, I'll play someone, whether it's practice or a match or anything, and then some time will pass and that situation will happen again, whether it's that person or somebody kind of like them at the similar level. And all of a sudden I feel differently on the court because I have gotten better. And so that's sort of the feeling that I really, really went after, was that I enjoyed that feeling of, putting in work to do something and then seeing it actually come to fruition on the other side.
One of the things that fascinates me about tennis players is they practice together, but how do you make sure that you're not giving away some of your learnings over the last year or since you
Yeah,
met
I
them?
mean, at this point, when you're on the pro tour, you play with each other, you see each other all the time. So there's not much that you're going to necessarily, keep hidden. But I will say that's something I regret a little bit from my junior days, is that, there's always a situation where you're in a city and there's other players, and like some people are coached by different people and whatnot, and you don't maybe play and use each other as, good talented juniors to improve, for everybody to improve. And I feel like that's a big mistake that tennis players make a lot of times, is they try to keep things secret, where the end of the day is everyone's only going to improve if they play with each other. If two good players play against each other, it's only going to help. Even if you give away something, you're still going to, what you give is going to be a lot less than what you get from that other good player playing. You can learn so much from other people. I feel like that's an attitude that I think needs to change a little bit in tennis, because I feel like you can really learn more from other players rather than, giving them something.
Yeah, that is an important point. We are a bunch of players here in the Bay Area playing tennis at a recreational level.
Yeah.
Do you think you look or analyze the game differently once you start getting coached? Because a lot of the times I go to public courts and I see people getting coached on the other side, and it's tough. Like, doing the same thing, hitting so many forehands, doing all
Hmm.
the grueling sessions for fitness, etc. Just seems tough. I mean, when I see a court, I just want to go there and play.
Hmm.
So you have seen both sides. I mean, you started tennis without getting coached, and then you started to get coached. Did you start looking at the game differently, and what actually changed?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always evolving, right? It's not a stagnant thing. I think that's the beautiful thing about sport and about tennis, is that no matter how good I am or was or will be, you can always get better. So you're always looking for sort of that way, and I think that's the curiosity that sort of separates maybe the people that play this game and play it at a super high level and want to always be there, is that they're always curious to see how they can do a little bit better, and whether that's, and not everything works, right? I mean, it doesn't mean that like you try something and it works for sure. You try something, it may fail, but you know that, okay, that's not it for me. Maybe I got to find something else. So I think that's the sort of I guess that's what you can call the passion for the game that I have for sure. I know I do, because I know that because I don't have that for anything else. There's nothing else that I've come across where I have so much patience and interest and time for, trying to look at something and say, oh, maybe this can help me 1% or 2%. Like I just don't have it for anything else. And so I think that's a big part of the sort of journey, is that sort of that curiosity of trying to always improve.
Yeah, you spoke about evolution of the game, and I remember seeing this picture of the Wimbledon court from the 80s and this,
Hmm.
70s, and now the 2020s. How the grass gets gets farther behind the net.
Right.
Serve and volley is pretty much non-existent anymore. And you have had a long enough career to have seen both faces.
Yeah.
And while moving from singles to doubles, is that one of the biggest differentiating factor? is how good you are at the nets.
Um, I think it's part of it. I think certain people, if you have sort of net skills inherently, it certainly helps in the doubles. But I don't think it's necessarily like a compulsory matter. I mean, I feel like there's plenty of good doubles players, especially nowadays, that are certainly their strength is not playing at the net. They're competent enough at it. But I feel like the biggest thing about singles or doubles is that you learn to become a better teammate, a better partner. Because in tennis, we spend our whole lives playing singles, just you, not even a coach, not even when you're playing a match, it's just you. There's nobody there. So you learn to deal with things yourself. You learn to internalize. You learn to maybe not show your opponent what you're feeling, because if you're feeling bad, you don't want them to know all this and that. But when you have a partner now, you all of a sudden have somebody that they can help you and you can help them. And that's part of sort of, in these matches is not, you don't have to win by yourself anymore. You can have someone there who can help. So I think more than any tennis skill, I think being a good teammate and a good partner is probably the biggest difference and the biggest skill that is required for doubles.
Yeah, I had the great opportunity to talk to Rohan Bopanna for
Hmm.
one of my episodes, and I was always curious to know how people find the perfect doubles partner. And when you're looking out for partners, what what skills are you looking for? In the sense that you may be contributing certain things, and you might want someone to complement or maybe bolster some of the skills that you bring in. Is there something specific that you look for when you're looking for a partner? And does it change between mixed doubles and doubles? Because you have done both.
Okay. The first one is I will say the first thing you got to realize is there's not going to ever be a perfect partner. Like you're going to have to deal with someone's, weaknesses or let's say lack of strengths. And I think if you're looking for a perfect partner, you're going to be disappointed quite a lot. But for me, I think about it as I want someone with the same similar mindset to me. Again, always looking to improve, always looking to get better, not, looking to try and yeah, have the ambition to be one of the best, if not the best in the world, that kind of thing. So I start with that. I mean, it's all about that. And if they're competitive, if they really want to get out there and work for whatever they get, not So I think the mindset for me is super important. And then yeah, when it comes to tennis, certain things are there. Like I'm obviously not the best athlete. I'm a little older, so trying to find maybe someone who's a great athlete, a little bit younger, a little bit more enthusiasm. Maybe I can help them with my experience, that sort of thing. But again, all of the tennis stuff, the forehands and the backhands and the serves, that all comes a bit later down the road for me. I want to make sure that my partner has the same idea about how they want to approach the job as I do. And I think that's the first and most important thing, really, before it comes to any tennis stuff. And then you asked about mixed doubles. Mixed doubles, we only play 4 times a year, right? So it's a very different thing. I mean, the doubles is a year-round thing. You're playing at all these events. You're really trying to work towards something. I mean, mixed is more of a spur of the moment. So that's more just like if you know someone, you're friendly, you can play, and you feel like you'll enjoy it and whatnot. It's a little bit of a different mindset, at least for me. And I don't honestly play that much anymore because I feel like I want to at the majors. I want to give the doubles my 100% effort. And yeah, it gets tough. It's a grueling thing to play every day, which ends up happening a lot of times in the mixed, or maybe 2 matches in one day. So it's less concerning to me, or I don't put as much into it. That's for sure.
Hmm. Yeah, now let's get to the game that mattered the most, or probably one of the games that mattered the most in the Olympics. What was it like to play Nadal and Alcaraz? Probably one of the greats of the game and budding talent. Or I mean, I think he has like 5 Grand Slams already. I don't think I
Yeah.
can call
Yeah,
him
he's
that
probably more
anymore.
than a budding talent. Yeah.
uh, Walk me through that day. Like, what was that day like?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I said, I think in one of the interviews we had afterwards was, in my opinion, Rafa at Roland Garros is the best any athlete has ever been in any sport, not just tennis. So like him on that court in that environment is the ultimate challenge, in terms of how successful he's been. But at the end of the day, that all of those things were in singles, right? I mean, it wasn't in doubles is truly a different game, and I think we spent a lot of time just making sure that we realize that yeah, okay, this is it's a great moment and it's a cool thing to be a part of, but we are playing doubles, and my partner and I felt quite confident in our skills and what game plan we were going to bring to the court. And then also obviously having Bob and Mike Bryan in our corner as two of the, well, for me, the greatest doubles team of all time. They really help in those scenarios because anything that you might be feeling or I might have been feeling, they felt 10 times more, or 10 times more times. I mean, they really have been through it all. So, they were fantastic. But I mean, I think just walking on that court to a full stadium, and I did my best just to soak it in because I mean, we don't get that opportunity that much. That's normal life for Rafa and Carlos. Every match they play is in sort of that environment, and we don't get that as doubles players, often, if ever. So I didn't try to shut it out. I didn't try to, even though nobody was rooting for us, I didn't mind any of that. Just to play in that kind of energy was great. I mean, that's what you play for. That's what you live for, is those moments. It makes all of the work and all of the difficult times worth it when you play in a scenario like that on an iconic court. So I relished the opportunity, and I thought we felt like if we executed a game plan that we were going to do well, and I thought we did great that night, and I think we dealt with some challenges, but I thought it was a great performance.
Yeah, I mean, it really was an amazing performance. How do you play when the entire stadium is not rooting for you, but the opposite team?
Yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard for sure, but I think at the end of the day, that's when it comes down to it is tennis at the end of the day. It's the thing that I know how to do best. So whether there's nobody rooting for me or nobody in the crowd or 15,000 people rooting for me or against me, whatever it is, it's still the game, It's the one thing in my life that I'm confident I know how to do. So it's settling to know that, and I think that's where you got to rely on, yeah, why you're there in the first place, and the work that you put in, and sort of rely on the experience and all of the times that you feel like you've done something to better yourself. I think that those are moments you kind of rely on those things.
Hmm. Does crowd really impact performance? I mean, the reason why I'm asking this is, you play the Grand Slams, obviously it's going to be full house or close to full
Hmm.
house. And then you play these little tournaments,
Hmm.
and also COVID happened in 2020,
Yeah.
where you probably were playing in front of no crowds. So did that have like a mental impact on, like, hey, what am I doing here? Because I've heard that it did affect a lot of athletes because they draw this energy from the crowd, and that kind of made them perform better. How is it for you?
Absolutely, it affects it. I mean, it certainly brings the energy. We talk about that all the time, my partner and I, when, if we feel like there is going to be a big crowd, or there a lot of times if we feel like there isn't, we want to make sure that some of the energy that we take from the crowd and the atmosphere, if it's not going to be there, we have to do better. We have to provide it ourselves. We have to make sure it's not sort of flat on our end. I think it's a big, big deal, and I think we all as athletes got a real taste of that during COVID when you're playing huge matches in front of literally nobody. I mean, I played a Grand Slam final in Australia in 2021. I played a US Open semi and all that in front of just the people that were there with us. Um, and it's a totally different feeling. So yeah, if somebody tells you, look, I shouldn't speak for somebody else, but I definitely get affected by the crowd. And I think it's about managing it and turning it into as much of a positive for yourself as you can.
Yeah, wow, that's fantastic. You've won US Open three times in a row, and I think that's phenomenal. And I was looking at some of the big wins that you've had, and that has occurred primarily in the second phase of your career.
Hmm.
And in your first phase of the career, you were probably focusing more on singles, and you did manage to get to the mid 50s ranking. When did you decide to pivot to doubles? You have also mentioned that doubles was always something that you loved, and that singles was going to take a backseat, and then you retired in 2017. Uh,
Yeah, it was basically at the end of 2016. I remember it was the off season. I played over 100 matches that year, singles and doubles combined, and I was 32 at the time, and I knew that if I kept doing that, I was probably going to have 1 or 2 more years maximum left in my career, and I knew I didn't want to leave tennis without giving doubles a full shot, as being a full-time doubles player, because some of the guys can do really well in doubles while they're playing singles. I wasn't one of those. I needed to make sure I focused on it fully to really reach my potential. And so, yeah, it was kind of a decision that was tough in a way because I love to play singles. I love to play in the Grand Slams, and like you said, I won a couple of titles on tour, and so I didn't feel like I was too far off a pretty high level. but it was really the decision was staring me in the face at that point. That was sort of the moment when I needed to make it. And yeah, I think, while the majors and all the success has come after that, I was really proud of how I managed my singles career, and the fact that I did get to the mid 50s and won two titles on tour is something that, with my game style, it was sort of one that fit more a bit better in the 80s and 90s. And so I was still able to, have a little bit of success in this era, which I think, yeah, it was a pretty good effort from me.
And before we end this podcast, I just want to get an understanding of how life is like at
Mhm.
the Olympic Village. You briefly mentioned to me that you did not stay at the Olympic Village, but walk me through that whole process of, how does the USA team get together? How do you get to Paris, and how do you like manage your stuff and like an everyday glimpse of an Olympian?
Yeah, it's a really cool experience. Like in tennis, we don't play on a team ever, So when you get these weeks like, Davis Cup or the Olympic weeks or Olympic years when they come around, it's pretty special. So yeah, normally, we have our arrival day in Paris. I think this year it was on Monday, if I'm not mistaken, before the event started, and everyone gets there. And then, the US team, we're fortunate we have like a distribution center for our Olympic clothing and all that. So we get to go through this like whole deal where we pick out some stuff and try on some stuff and get some accessories. And, we do that all as a team, and you take some pictures and you do some things like that. So that's quite a lot of fun. And then, yeah, like you said, I didn't stay in the village this year, but in past Olympics when I've gone, I mean, it's a pretty neat thing to think that, basically everyone who's at the top of any Olympic sport is in this one small little area. And like, countries that you may not know and certainly have not visited, they have athletes in sports and competing. And, just to be around that, you feel like such a small part of such a big undertaking or a big production that it's like, you realize just, yeah, how cool that is. In tennis sometimes we live in this vacuum or in this bubble where it seems like, you are the center of it all, and then you're in the Olympics, and you're like, you just realize how big it really is, and how sports, just for me, it just brings the world together, which I think is the biggest take back that I can say of playing through Olympics. Is you just sports has the ability to do that maybe better than anything. And so, yeah, and then when the competition starts, it kind of goes back to being something that you're pretty used to. We play tennis tournaments almost every week of the year. So once it starts, other than the fact that you're playing for your country, which brings its own, pressure and differences, which I'm very grateful for, it just still is, like I said before, it's a tennis match, and that's the thing that I know how to do the best. So once the competition starts, it's sort of like back to normal stuff. But before and after it is pretty different and pretty neat to experience.
Nice. Do you have any special reception by the US once you get the medal, or you know?
You We after we played our match on Saturday, yeah, there's this thing called the USA House where people go and they rent out a big space. In this case, it was Paris, and they, celebrate any of the medalists that want to come and all that. So that's really cool. Um, in terms of what it's like, it's wonderful because we obviously, as representing the U.S., there's quite a few medals won each Olympics, which is great. So it's maybe not quite as rare, I guess I would say, as some other countries would have it, but they do a great job of recognizing you if you're, if you do manage to make a medal or even just represent the country at all.
Are there any special benefits that an Olympic gold medalist or silver medalist or bronze medalist gets?
Not that I know of, other than other than just a bit of recognition and all that. But no, there's nothing like that, unfortunately. They would be giving out quite a few benefits if that was the case. But yeah, no,
Yeah, I mean, in a country like US, for sure. Yeah,
yeah,
it's a big deal in India, where
yeah.
you
I know that
directly
that I
get to
that
meet the prime minister of the
yeah,
country.
that I do know, which is great. Look, I mean, I think it's an unbelievable achievement, for an Indian athlete to win a medal. I think, the recognition is well deserved. It's different, it's different from countries that have a sort of history of doing that and countries that don't. And I think, I certainly hope, as somebody of Indian heritage, that India continues to do great and wins many medals in the future. Certainly, it's something that I'm proud of.
Yeah.
Even though I don't represent the country, it's something I definitely feel pride for.
Yeah, I saw that contrast right after the 2023 Cricket World Cup when Australia won the tournament, and the Australian captain landed in Melbourne, and he was just walking away like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
normal human with his trolley. Rajiv, you're big on giving back to the sport. You have the foundation based out of
Mhm.
Indianapolis. Tell me a little bit about that and what you are trying to achieve through this foundation.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I feel like I benefited a lot from, like I said, was community support, and I think I do remember as a kid, anytime I got to be around a person, in my case, a tennis player that was, a professional on the tour, maybe they won a couple titles, even just somebody that played professionally, I was like in awe. It was inspirational. I was a ball boy one time. We had a tournament here in Indianapolis until 2009. I was a ball boy one year and I got to play it 5 times, I think. So like, these kinds of things were moments, that I remembered and that really, it's hard to explain, but they just light a little fire in you when you get a chance to do that. And so, our foundation basically tries to use tennis in a way to inspire kids. It doesn't mean you have to be a professional if it's a kid that comes from a tough background or let's say a underprivileged, if you will. If tennis can be a source of fun for them, a source of inspiration, a source of maybe making the choice to play instead of doing something else, that's great. And so we have grants for those types of things. We have grants for schools, for high schools, to have them be able to have high school tennis teams. And then we also have a high performance grant for players that are looking to try and take tennis a little bit further, because it's an expensive sport. It requires travel, it requires coaching, it requires a lot of things that you take a big chance. And we're not in the position to fund anyone fully, but if we can help a little bit, I know it's something that I really appreciated when I was that age, and my parents did as well. And I think if you can build that connection and whatnot, I think it's great. And so, we don't stretch too far. We just try to help our community because that's what's important to me. I feel like is our area, and we do the best we can. So yeah, we have a few different grants that we like to give out, and then we've hosted a couple of events here. We've hosted some exhibitions, and then we host like a kids clinic, try to do it every year for 50, 60 kids to come and just have a great time playing the game, because ultimately that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Well, Rajiv, thank you so much for your time. It was great chatting with you, and all the best with your career and the foundation, and probably see you at the US Open.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.